What's up guys, and welcome back to On the Brick with another custom mock review. This is the V19 Torrent, or I guess the V19 Starfighter according to Brickvault. This build was made with 100% genuine LEGO pieces, and comes in at a total of 718 of those pieces, plus 91 for the stand. Now this is minifig scale, so it fits in line along with all of the other sets from Brickvault here. And to no surprise is a little bit smaller than most. In this landed configuration, it is 8.5 inches long, 8.5 inches wide, and 7 inches tall, or just under 7 inches. Also, sorry for my voice today. Now, this comes from the designer Thomas Jenkins, who I don't think I've built anything else from, but oh my goodness, I really should. This is easily one of the best sets that I have ever purchased from Brickvault. This thing not only looks good, but it also does that by incorporating several different techniques which make it really fun to build, and manages to still be stable on top of that while having functionality as well. Something which many other mocks out there from Brickvault and other designers alike try to do, but ultimately fail in one of those aspects to some degree. But this set, just like the alpha that I showed off 2 weeks ago, does not. This is a almost perfect mock, because when I say set, some people tend to get upset, no pun intended. So one of the aspects of functionality is of course the cockpit here. It is extremely easy to remove the canopy this time around. It's only connected by a single stud. However, in order to get this to look as nice as it does and everything, some aspects of the cockpit itself did have to be sacrificed, so there aren't really any studs to fit in the minifigure. However, if you put one in anyway, you'll notice that it just sits perfectly snug. Just as it is here, it's not going to go anywhere, and with it in place, you can easily replace the canopy over it and have a nice pilot. It's really that simple. One aspect of this build that I personally love is something we saw a very similar attempt at when it comes to the original Naboo Starfighter, and that is this like dark red section here and how it's connected to the rest of the build. This is connected only by that clip there, but it's meant to try and emulate a very unique, or well, not really very unique, but an interesting angle, since the front of this isn't really flush and is at an angle with a slight curve, which is a little more difficult to do when that center area also has a curve to it. But a huge difference between this and the original Naboo Starfighter is that this isn't going anywhere. It's going to stay exactly like it is. So while it's not anything super unique or like really amazing, it works exactly like it should. And another area that looks good and has functionality are the engines. This is meant to be, well, not only the engines, but also incorporates the pieces needed to raise and lower the wings. And when you're just looking at it like this, you don't even really notice. There's just enough differences here to give you that illusion that these are the engines, while also hiding the pieces that make them work. Now, a lot of custom sets do that, and especially custom sets from Brickvault, but I did want to point it out here as well. Now, I did say that this set was almost perfect, and that's because there is one section that is unfortunately a little fragile. Now, it's pretty easy to fix with one simple function later, but it's this section here. If any part of this build is to fall off on you, it's going to be this section here, which you might think is a little difficult to put back on, but I'll show you how to in just 1 second. Because first, I want to show you the underside here, which has the only other very minor complaint that I have about this set, and that is these panel pieces here. You might be looking at this, wondering what's wrong with them. It looks fine, and yeah, they do look fine, and they function perfectly fine. The problem with them actually comes in the instructions. See, you actually have to put this white section on top of it in first, And then the instructions literally tell you that you might have to undo the last step in order to put the panel pieces in, which makes me wonder why they were done in that order. And the answer is because otherwise you're really going to struggle. So the way that I ended up having to do it is by popping out the previous section first, and then I just lined up the panels to where they needed to go without fully placing them in yet. I then took the original section, slid it almost into place, make sure everything was aligned, and then when you press it all together, it kind of just works. It's a little weird, and it might take a few tries to get right, but I promise you it'll make sense and it will work. So of course with that, the last big functionality is going to be the wings themselves, and I'll tell you, these ones on the side are very, very easy to lower. You do want to handle them with a little bit of care because this is a mock, but you're going to be able to lower them really easily. But uh-oh, what about now? How am I supposed to display it here? Well, that's where the stand comes into play, because I finally actually bought a stand for one of these things. And I'll tell you, for this one, it's absolutely necessary. Also, I told you my cat loved this one. Even while filming, she's still here looking at it. Now, talking about stands is kind of a weird thing to do because they either work or they don't, but this one works extremely well. It's pretty sturdy, one of the first things that I built for this as well, and I've had zero issues with it. It is a little weird to actually put the V19 on it, but once you figure out how to, it works perfectly fine. The same thing that it was just sitting on in the landed position sits on the stand itself, and yes, I know the middle wing is a little weird, but because of this, I have zero issues with how this stand is. I feel fully confident that it will be perfectly fine on this and that it's never gonna like fall off or anything. And with it on the stand and the top wing now lowered, it makes it a lot easier to fix that back section. So if it ever does fall off, just lower the wing and do that. But speaking of the wings, boy, these are really some of the best that I've seen. They're made up of about 4 or 5 different sections here, all coming together using the snot technique and various techniques to make them look nice and smooth and get a great finish. I really loved building these and seeing just how they came together here. For instance, this section here that has the slopes on the top and the bottom and like those red and white stripes is a completely different section than what's right next to it. And that was done to both get the stripes in there and that unique angle of this wing. And I really just want to point out this section here because you really can see how intricate it is with brackets, plates, and tiles and Technic bricks all facing different directions to make this work. And then of course it's all capped off with the single gun on it. Both wings have one and they're both exactly the same. Pretty simple, but I think it does the job fine. So this does bring into question the third/middle wing, which I have to say is a little more fragile than the other two. The techniques used here are very similar to the main wings, but this is a much more plain one, so there's not as much to talk about here. Except this gap, because if you go back and you watch earlier sections of this video, you'll notice that those pieces were pressed together. This only happened when I lowered the wing, which is why I say be a little more careful with this one. If it does pop off like it did here, you can very easily pop it right back on though and fix it. It's not that big of a deal, so just be careful. Overall, this is a very, very good custom build, and one that I would highly recommend to anyone who likes the Clone Wars, Star Wars, or just wants a really nice build. The final design gets a 10 out of 10, the actual build process will get an 8 out of 10, the instructions will also get an 8 out of 10 as well, and the cost of the instructions is gonna get like a 7, maybe like a 7.5. $16 for them is a lot, but it's also kind of worth it for this one, so I can't really dock it all too much. Now with all that said, I would genuinely love it if you left me your thoughts in the comments down below. What other sets should I take a look at, or would you like to see? Remember to like if you haven't already, and subscribe because hey, you made it to the end of the video, so you might as well. Also consider checking me out on Instagram, Discord, and of course on Patreon, where you can join all these wonderful people. You know the whole drill by now. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.